Welcome to another deep dive, and today we're going to be talking about the mystery of Oak Island. It's a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia in Canada, and for centuries there have been all these tales of buried treasure. But is it real, or is it just a really good story?
Well, the story starts way back in 1795. There was this teenager named Daniel McGinnis, and he was exploring the island and came across this depression in the ground.
And it didn't look natural, right? Like he thought someone had dug it on purpose.
Exactly. So he came back with some friends and they started digging. And what they found, it's kind of strange, every 10 feet, they hit a layer of logs. It's like platforms or something.
So almost like someone had intentionally built this thing.
Right. And that's how the money pit was born. And that's really what kicked off centuries of speculation. They eventually had to stop digging, but that didn't stop the mystery.
No, not at all. Then in 1802, the Onslow Company showed up. They were determined to find the treasure. They dug way deeper, like 90 feet down, and they hit more layers of logs.
But they also hit something else.
What was that?
Seawater. Like the pit flooded. It was almost like a booby trap or something.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but the Onslow Company, they didn't give up. They kept digging, and then they found something really interesting.
This is getting good. What did they find?
At about 80 feet down, they pulled up a stone, and it had these symbols carved into it. It became known as the stone cipher. But no one, to this day, has been able to figure out what those symbols mean.
That is so cool and so frustrating at the same time. You know, it's right there, but you can't understand it.
Right. It just adds to the mystery.
So what happened to the Onslow Company? Did they finally find the treasure?
No, they had to abandon the dig eventually.
Okay, but the Oak Island mystery didn't end there, right?
Of course not. In 1849, the Truro Company, they took a shot at it. They brought new drilling techniques to the island, hoping to get deeper into the money pit.
So were they able to overcome that flooding problem?
No. They dug down a good ways, but every time they got close, that water, it would just rush back in. They just couldn't stop it. So what did they do? Give up like the others.
Well, instead of focusing solely on the money pit, they shifted their attention to Smith's Cove, which is a nearby area on the island. They started to think maybe, just maybe, there was a connection between the cove and all that flooding in the money pit.
And they were onto something, right?
Yeah. What they uncovered in Smith's Cove was a network of what appeared to be flood tunnels. It seemed like someone had designed these things to protect whatever was down there in the money pit.
I mean, that is incredible. Like, the engineering involved to create something that complex centuries ago. Whoever built this thing was serious about protecting whatever they hid.
It's a testament to their dedication, for sure. It just adds another layer to the mystery of Oak Island.
So, were the Truro Company able to seal off those tunnels?
They weren't. And eventually, they too had to give up on the money pit. And then to make things worse, the bottom of the shaft collapsed, making it even more of a challenge for anyone else who came after.
Oh, wow. So by the late 1800s, word about Oak Island was spreading. Newspapers were publishing stories. The island's legend was growing.
Right. More and more expeditions were being launched, driven by the stories and the rumors. Some treasure hunters even claimed they had cracked the code on that stone cipher. One interpretation said there were 2 million pounds buried just 10 feet below it.
Wait, 2 million pounds? That's a lot of money.
It is.
So did they ever find it?
Well, there's a bit of a snag in that theory. The stone itself vanished. We don't know what it said. We don't even know if it was real.
Okay, so we've got flooding, collapsing shafts, and a disappearing stone with a secret code. What could possibly happen next?
Well, as you can imagine, with more people becoming interested in Oak Island, things took a darker turn. Tragedy struck in 1861 during an excavation by the Oak Island Association. A pump engine boiler exploded. It was the first recorded death on the island.
Wow, so it's not just a fun treasure hunt anymore. It's actually dangerous.
Exactly, and it gets worse.
Okay, don't leave me hanging. What happened?
That's when the legend of the Oak Island curse started. The legend says 7 men will die in pursuit of the treasure before it can be found.
7 men. And one had already died.
Right. Then in 1897, a worker named Maynard Kaiser, he fell to his death while working on the island. That became the second death attributed to the alleged curse.
So now the curse is 2 for 2.
Unfortunately, yes. But that same year, a new group arrived, equipped with steam pumps and drilling gear. They couldn't solve the water problem, but they did manage to pull up something interesting. A tiny piece of sheepskin parchment.
Okay, what was written on it?
Just 2 letters written in India ink, either 5 or booby.
Another clue, but another question mark.
Exactly. This group also tried something different. They poured red paint into the flooded pit, hoping to track where the water was going.
What do they find?
3 exit holes around the island, which meant there was a whole network of tunnels or drains under the island. It just reinforced the idea that Oak Island was hiding something big.
And that takes us into the 20th century, where the Oak Island mystery continues to capture people's imaginations.
And in 1909, another group decided to give it a go. They were called the Old Gold Salvage Group. And get this, one of the members was Franklin D. Roosevelt.
No way. Like the President Roosevelt.
Yep, the one and only. He was fascinated by the Oak Island mystery and even followed the developments throughout his life.
That's pretty cool. So did President Roosevelt ever actually visit Oak Island?
Well, the records aren't entirely clear on that, but we do know the group managed to dig down to 113 feet.
Wow.
And they even sent divers down.
Okay, so did they find the treasure?
Not exactly, no chests of gold or anything like that. But they did examine that stone cipher that I mentioned earlier, the one that was found in some of the earlier digs.
Right, the one with the symbols carved into it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. When they actually looked at it closely, it turned out to be a plain basalt rock. No markings at all.
So the whole cipher thing was a hoax.
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe the original markings faded over time, or maybe the story got embellished, But it definitely cast doubt on the authenticity of the cipher.
Oak Island does have a way of blurring the lines between fact and fiction. So what happened next?
Well, Oak Island just kept attracting treasure hunters. In 1928, a New York newspaper published an article about the island.
And I'm guessing that sparked someone's interest.
It did. It caught the attention of William Chappell, and he started excavating a new shaft in 1931, southwest of the original money pit.
So he was trying to avoid those flood tunnels?
Maybe, but still no treasure. He found some artifacts like an axe, an anchor, a pick, but that was about it. Then another guy named Gilbert Hedden came onto the scene. He was really into the engineering challenges of the money pit. He owned a steel fabrication company.
So this guy was no stranger to big projects.
Nope. Hedden bought the southeastern end of the island in 1935 and spent years digging and exploring. He even wrote letters to King George VI about his progress.
Wow, that's dedication. So did he find anything?
Sadly, no. He was no more successful than anyone before him. And unfortunately, in 1936, the curse of Oak Island, it claimed its 3rd victim.
Oh no. Who was it this time?
A man named George Drouillard. He fell from a derrick. It was a grim reminder of how dangerous this all was.
Right. Because it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the hunt, but there are real risks involved. So did the search stop after that?
Not at all. In 1959, a treasure hunter named Robert Restall arrived on the island with his family.
He brought his whole family to Oak Island. Bold move.
It was. And tragically, their story would become part of the Oak Island legend. In 1965, Robert was working in Smith's Cove when he was overcome by fumes and collapsed.
Oh no, I bet it was those gases from the tunnels.
Probably. His son tried to save him, but he was overcome by the fumes too. Then 2 other men rushed in to help, and, well, they didn't make it either.
Wow, that's terrible.
It was a devastating accident.
Yeah.
Only 1 man survived to tell the tale. That brought the death toll up to 6, fueling the belief in the curse even more.
6 men. Just one away from that supposed curse being fulfilled. It's kind of hard not to believe in it at this point.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. But later that same year, a guy named Robert Dunfield decided to try his luck. He leased parts of the island, and he brought in some serious equipment, like a 70-ton crane, heavy machinery, the whole works.
So he really went all in.
He did. Dug down to 134 feet.
Find anything.
Nope, no treasure. But he did build a causeway to transport his equipment, which still connects Oak Island to the mainland today. So that's one lasting impact he had on the island.
And the search went on. I read that one of the most extensive excavations on Oak Island started in 1967.
That's right. Daniel Blankenship and David Tobias formed a syndicate. They called it the Triton Alliance. They bought most of the island and were determined to finally solve the mystery.
I remember reading about Blankenship. He was obsessed with Oak Island, right?
Oh, yeah. Devoted his life to it, stayed involved with the search until he died in 2019.
That's some serious commitment.
Yeah.
So what did the Triton Alliance find?
Well, in 1971, they dug this 235-foot shaft they called Borehole 10X.
Borehole 10X. That sounds intense.
Yeah, they claimed that their cameras captured images of chests, human remains, tools, you name it. but those images were never really clear, and their findings were never verified.
Oak Island strikes again. So much mystery.
It's true. And unfortunately, the shaft collapsed, and they had money troubles, so they had to scale back their operations. Then, in the 90s, a group of scientists from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, they surveyed the island.
Okay, what were they looking for?
They were trying to figure out why the money pit kept flooding.
I bet they were looking for those flood tunnels.
Right, but their findings kind of threw a wrench in that theory. They concluded that the flooding was natural, caused by freshwater and tidal pressures.
So no elaborate flood tunnel system.
Well, the research didn't completely rule it out, but it definitely suggested that the flooding might not be as nefarious as everyone thought.
So did this new scientific explanation stop the treasure hunters?
Of course not. Oak Island has a way of keeping people hooked.
I guess you can't stop someone who believes in buried treasure.
That's right. In 1996, there was this researcher named Robert S. Young, and he bought a section of the island known as Lot 5.
Okay, what was his approach? More digging?
He actually thought the key was in historical records, not just digging. He went deep into the archives, examining old documents and maps.
So did he find anything?
He did. He actually found a Spanish coin from 1781.
Wow, so we're talking pre-American Revolution.
Exactly.
That definitely adds another wrinkle to the story. What was a Spanish coin doing on Oak Island all those years ago?
Right. It's one of those clues that raises more questions than it answers. But Young was a meticulous researcher, and he shared all his findings on his website. It's a treasure trove of information for anyone interested in the history of the island.
Okay, so all these years of searching, and we've got mysterious logs, flood tunnels, a disappearing stone cipher, a Spanish coin, and now a website full of historical records. Oak Island is like a giant puzzle box. So what happened next? Did anyone ever find the treasure?
Well, the Oak Island mystery entered a new era in the 21st century with these two brothers, Rick and Marty Legina. In 2006, they bought 50% of Oak Island Tours, which gives tours of the island.
Wait, there are tours of Oak Island?
Yeah, it's a popular tourist destination. People are fascinated by the mystery. Anyway, these Legina brothers, they were determined to solve the Oak Island enigma.
So they had the money and the motivation. Did they have the expertise?
Oh, yeah. They put together a team of experts, brought in some serious tech, and went to work.
Did they find anything?
Well, their work was documented on this History Channel series called The Curse of Oak Island. It premiered in 2014.
I think I've heard of that show.
Yeah, it's really popular. They've uncovered some cool stuff, more artifacts, signs of past activity. But that ultimate treasure, it's still out there somewhere.
Still elusive after all these years. I guess that's what keeps people coming back, that hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll be the ones to finally crack the code. So, is there treasure on Oak Island? Or is the island itself the real treasure?
A place where history, mystery, and legend collide. Maybe someday we'll know for sure, but until then, the Oak Island mystery will keep calling out to those who dream of finding something extraordinary.
It makes you think about all the secrets that are still out there, hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. It's a lot to take in, for sure. All these years of searching, and we've got mysterious logs, flood tunnels, a disappearing stone cipher, a Spanish coin, and a website full of historical records. Oak Island's like a giant puzzle box. Of all the evidence that's been found, what do you think is the most compelling?
It's tough to say. Each discovery adds to the intrigue, but none of them have given us definitive proof of buried treasure. The flood tunnel system in Smith's Cove is definitely one of the most remarkable things. I mean, whoever designed that was a serious engineer.
Right, that level of complexity, all those centuries ago. What were they trying to protect so fiercely? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, they successfully flooded the money pit time and time again, so clearly they knew what they were doing.
And then there's the mystery of that stone cipher. Did it really exist? What was written on it? It's so frustrating that the stone itself just vanished.
It is. The stories about the cipher are really interesting, but without the actual stone, it's impossible to know for sure. Maybe it was never real. Maybe the story got exaggerated over time to make the mystery more exciting.
That wouldn't be surprising. Oak Island stories have a way of growing in the telling. So if we set aside the cipher for a moment, there are still other artifacts that need explaining. What about that Spanish coin Robert Young found? What was a Spanish coin doing on Oak Island in 1781?
That's a great question. It definitely adds another piece to the puzzle, another clue in the grand mystery of Oak Island. But it doesn't necessarily prove the existence of buried treasure.
Right, it could have ended up there any number of ways. So many possibilities. What about the work of the Legina brothers? They've been at it for a while now. And they've got some serious resources.
They've definitely brought a new level of technology and expertise to the search. And yeah, they found some interesting things, but the biggest question of all remains unanswered. Is there treasure on Oak Island?
It seems like after all these years of searching, we're really no closer to a definitive answer. Maybe the real treasure of Oak Island isn't gold or jewels or ancient artifacts. Maybe the real treasure is the search itself.
You might be right. I mean, it's captivated people's imaginations for centuries. It's brought together historians, engineers, scientists, treasure hunters, you name it.
It's a reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved, and that's okay. Sometimes the journey is just as valuable as the destination. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mystery of Oak Island. It's a fascinating story, and who knows, maybe someday that elusive treasure will finally be found.